Hi, I'm Geoff Stone, and welcome to another episode of Lightning Studio Podcast. I'm here today with Dr. Dan Young, and we are not social distancing. Today is the 18th, and currently there are no confirmed cases of the coronavirus here at GBC. All classes are now online, and all activities and everything canceled, and graduation postponed. Let's get into this. You're here with me today, so can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do at GBC?
Sure. So, as Geoff mentioned, Dr. Dan Young. I am the director of the Doctor of Business Administration program here at Goldey-Beacom College. I came over after about 6.5 years at Wilmington University in their doctoral program of business. And concurrently with that, I worked for 12 years at the University of Delaware teaching entrepreneurship and just really trying to figure out new and creative ways to teach students. So I came to Goldey-Beacom because actually a student who I was the chair of her dissertation committee at Wilmington University called me up, said that Goldey-Beacom College was starting a doctoral program in business, and she thought that I would be perfect to apply for that. So I have to give her props for that. As we have started the program and created it, and really created it in the image of Goldey-Beacom, if you will, focused on great teaching, focused on individualized attention, focused on solving real world problems. We've had a great time and had a lot of great success. So really happy to be here.
So what has been some of the, kind of like struggles or, interesting things coming from Wilmington to GBC and kind of starting that program here?
Well, I think one of the major differences, and there are a number, is just the simple size of Wilmington University compared to that of Goldey-Beacom, which is a much more intimate campus. Here at Goldey-Beacom, it allows us to have a much closer relationship with students than I really had at Wilmington University. Whenever you're able to create a program from scratch, you're able to diffuse a lot of the issues that you potentially had with other programs. So it's not as much difficulties. Most of the difficulty comes in ideating what you want to have happen and then putting into play when no one had ever seen it before. So as you know, one of the things that we do in the doctoral program is we solve real-world business problems, oftentimes in lieu of using a textbook. That comes with its own issues. So, for example, we were working with one company at one point in time, a very, very, very large Fortune 500 company that had had a number of different issues with some of its machinery. And even though they started the process with us in a class, we found it hard to get in touch with them throughout the whole block because they were dealing with really large multinational issues. If I have a textbook, we don't really run into that problem. We go step by step with the textbook, and then students end the class at the end of the textbook. Here we had to work with them, try to get some of those problems, try to get deliverables out to them when they're going through a really tough time. So I think less of the challenge has been moving from one school to the other. There's certainly differences in terms of how we do business, but much more the challenge or the opportunity of the program is dealing with human beings in a very real way to solve very real problems. That's been the part that's been, for me, the most exciting, but maybe for some of my professors, the most the scariest part of it.
And to me, it really seems like the noise around is that education is always changing and evolving, and specifically with technology. And you mentioned like solving real world problems and giving your students, real world experience that they can transition into, that phase. How do you go about using technology to kind of, work with your students or showcase your program?
Well, I think one of the great things, if you can use the word great, I'll use great with air quotes in this case, is you obviously kind of time-stamped the beginning of our conversation here with the understanding that right now the entire world is dealing with the coronavirus outbreak. The DBA program, since its inception, has had a hybrid component to it, where every other week we are using Zoom classes and Zoom technology to be able to teach classes. So when this issue came about and we as a school were forced to go into online learning, the DBA program had actually been doing that for 2 years. So it really was not a transition at all for our professors who had all been vetted and have all been trained to do online learning, to simply say, instead of face-to-face this week, we're just going to do our regular Zoom call. So we've used Zoom technology in a number of different ways. That's been, I think, the most critical piece of technology that we've used. Also, we've tried to use a number of different software packages because of our commitment to eliminating most of the textbooks we use. We use a lot of open source software. So in our statistics courses, for example, we'll use a number of software packages that are open source, that are available to the public, that a lot of people just haven't used before because they're used to maybe buying a large-scale software license. So I think the program overall has made a lot of uses of video technology, a lot of uses of open source technology, and in reality, we really depend a lot on what we'll call human technology, to steal a phrase from Tony Robbins. Human technology just basically meaning having a good understanding of how different people learn at different times. Average age of a student in the DBA program is around, we'll say, 45 to 49 years old. And so we have to understand those students where they are in their lifestyle. If I'm teaching an undergraduate class, I'm dealing with wholly different issues than I'm dealing with someone who's almost 50 years old. So we have to really understand the best ways for people to learn, using things like Socratic method, which is just a fancy way of saying the professor asking more questions in the classroom than they do actually giving information. We depend on the students to research the information, and then we use critical thinking for them to really learn the lessons in the classroom. So between the uses of software technology, video technology, and human technology, I think we've tried to do a really good job of making use of every sort of innovative opportunity that was available to us.
And so a lot of this themes comes back to, like you said, human connection and entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And you yourself, you're a businessman, you're an entrepreneur, mm-hmm. and you're in education. So how have you gone about bringing your entrepreneur background to education, or vice versa? How have you connected those?
I think there's a major difference, and we've talked about this before, between being self-employed and being an entrepreneur. We always used to say a self-employed person, if they go on vacation, then they don't make any money. Whereas an entrepreneur, when they go on vacation, they make more money because they're not messing up their own system. And I think when you're an entrepreneur in academia, it really helps you because it forces you to create something like a course of study or a syllabus, and be willing to hand that off to another professor to teach that, even if they did not write that. So the businesses that I own, I'm really not actively materially involved in those businesses because I have people who help me run those so I can focus on my job here. And I think that's been helpful in a way because it allows me to try to create systems and structures and courses that are written in such a way that I can hand them off to another professor and have them be confident about using those materials in the classroom or online. So the ability to transcend entrepreneurial work and put it into a classroom has been very, very helpful to everything I've done so far.
And so the core of this seems to really be, the relationships, trusting people, building people up, the human connections. Can you tell me about how you value that and what you do to kind of grow those people, and how that's really the fundamental important piece of entrepreneurship and education in reality too?
Mm-hmm. So you touched on the most important word there, that's trust, right? All entrepreneurship is based on trust, self-trust and trust in others. I think that entrepreneurship in a lot of cases for many people has replaced undecided as it pertains to college majors, because it's the type of major and the type of exercise that it's much more like barbecue than it's like microwave, right? It has to be low and slow and development of ideas and pivoting of ideas until you get to where you want to be. It's not just the giant light bulb above your head and then all of a sudden you have the $1 million idea. It takes time to develop that. And so first of all, you have to trust in yourself that you know yourself well enough to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So, for example, when I left college, my first job out of college is I was a financial advisor. And in that role, we would work 70, 80 hours a week. We were making good money. Everything was fine. But at the end of the day, I retired from that position because it wasn't really value added for who I was. And I wasn't really being true to myself in terms of what really kind of stoked the fire. And so I didn't have enough trust that my ideas about what I wanted to do, which was teaching, were relevant enough or would be valued enough by other people who I was trying to impress at the time. And a lot of us who went through our 20s and 30s, we go through that exercise, right? So the first piece of all entrepreneurship is just having enough trust in yourself that you know best what you need to do. The second part, as you talked about, is having trust in others that things can be taught and that you've created a system that allows people to learn. Right? So whenever we talk about this concept of culture anywhere, we talk about culture in schools, culture in organizations. You can't actually import culture. You can't, there are probably a number of different accountants' offices around the country where people are on Segways and sitting on beanbag chairs, but because they're trying to import Google or Facebook's culture, and it just doesn't work. All you can really do is hire good people and have a good climate. And those people in that climate create the culture. You never know what the culture is going to look like, but you're just confident enough that the people you hired and the climate you set up works. So in the DBA program, for example, the most important thing there is to find the right people. And then we obviously have this climate where we go to them and say, listen, I want you to avoid being the sage on the stage and just talking from PowerPoints. And I want you to use Socratic method in working with people. And I want you to solve real business problems. That's the climate. Now, you, as this intelligent person that I've brought on here, you figure out how you're able to work within that climate. So each different cohort that we have in the doctoral program is actually very different. They actually have very, very different cultures. And we like that because they have indoctrinated a culture that works for that group of people. What works for cohort number 4 may not work for cohort number 1. So this concept of trust in all ways, in self-trust, in the trust that people have in each other to deploy curriculum, and the trust that even people have within the cohort is an essential part to both entrepreneurship and academia.
One of the fond memories I have of you is our guys who are entrepreneurs in their 20s, Arthur and Shaheen and Manuela, and they just moved back to Germany a couple months ago. And I remember, when they were working on Upendo and going through that phase, your support of them and your trust in them and kind of them going through a lot of the stuff that you were just talking about. And I feel like that's such a great example of kind of like what you bring here and your connection with students and the human, the value of relationships and just their defining, example of entrepreneurship. Can you tell me a little bit about, your relationship with them and kind of that phase?
Sure. So it's interesting because I never really think of it as a phase. I think that whenever someone pays to go to college, it's very hard to get the return on investment for just the piece of paper you get from walking across a stage. Where you really get return on investment in college is the relationships that you build as a student, the relationships you build with professors and staff and faculty and administration. You have to want to build that relationship where, Shaheen or Arthur or Manuela or you or Senya or anybody feel as though 20 years from now, you can call me on probably the same cell phone number, because I've probably had the same number for 20 years anyway, and say, Dan, I need this. Can you deliver this? That's worth a lot of money. And I think that one of the challenges that maybe students have, maybe it's deals a little bit with whether you're introverted, extroverted, shy, bold, what have you, is understanding that that's why you're going to college. Everything that happens in my marketing class that I teach, so spring, it's the spring block right now, I'm teaching marketing class. Every single thing I'm going to cover in that class, you can get from Google. And so my job tends to not be to make students more intelligent. My job is to make students smarter. Intelligence, you get that from Google. Being smart, you get from talking to someone like me who's failed enough that I can help you avoid pitfalls and landmines and things like that. So when, the Upendo guys, and I'll include Manuel in that group as the Upendo guys, they showed an interest in what I had to talk to them about. Obviously, I'll go through fire for those guys because I love those guys. And they are going to be part of my life forever. And that's part of what being a college professor is about. You make a lifelong commitment. It's not about blocks and semesters and 4 years here and there. It's about creating a relationship with someone. And the reason why I always call being a college professor or being a college administrator stealing money. And I call it that because I learn way more from you guys than you learn from me. I've learned so much from those Upendo guys about everything from how to create apps and how to use social media and how to do better crowdsourcing. And I bring that into the classroom. So your question's a good question. But it's the interesting part of it is we get way more from you guys than you get from us. And you should know that because hopefully that will make more students less shy about creating relationships with professors and actually checking in with them and actually wanting to be part of all of our lives. I think the challenge with college is you guys come to college, you sit in those classes, and you see your professors being at the end of their journey. Like you've gotten your doctorate, you're sitting here teaching me because you're at the end of the journey, and we're at the beginning of the journey. In reality, all of us are in the middle of the journey. You just don't realize that. And I think if more students actually realize that, they would realize that everything that they're saying in class and everything that they're sharing with their professors has extreme value. And then we as professors, we have to be humble enough to share that with you guys too.
Yeah, I think that is a great way to put it because just recently, last night actually, a couple weeks ago, we had our annual research symposium here where, faculty and staff shared some presentations and Dr. Mary Wheeling shared hers, and she could tell you, I even wrote in my post that I was not a great student, and I knew what I knew what I was coming to college for. I knew I was coming, to do a lot of this video stuff and to learn that practical, real world stuff that I can actually take into the next phase and just be a better storyteller and hone my skills. But and so I wasn't a great student, and she really worked with me and built that relationship. And then I ended up working with Mary, Dr. Joel Warden, and Dr. Kevin Hunt on our book and kind of created that relationship. And then that's part of, like you said, the relationships is the reason why I came back to GBC. It's the mentorship. It's seeing how different people lead situations. It's seeing how, like you said, people who seem like they're in the end of their journey, how they handle this phase when they're really in the middle and they're still learning. And so when she shared her presentation, it just goes to show, that there's so many more ways to teach and there's so many more ways to learn from somebody. And, it's not all this one step or this one, like stand in front of the classroom and teach. You can learn in many different ways. And I think that is of extreme value that I've gotten is through the relationships and through connecting with professors and staff. And so I want to kind of lead us into this last bit here, while we're at the college and we're almost empty, is the coronavirus. And you as an entrepreneur and as an educator, do you have anything that you'd like to share with just anybody, students, anybody who's looking to kind of take this time to better themselves?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think and I just shared this. There are many, I think Arthur Shaheen would call them probably Danisms, and Jono and Brendan and all these other guys in E-Club that I usually say. And one of the basic ones that I always say is that without destruction there's no creation. And that just basically means in the hardest times in world history, that's when the biggest companies and the most wealth and the most innovation has happened. It's very hard to innovate without some level of desperation, because it makes you push that extra mile. And so I know there's going to be a ton of students at home or with their friends or locally because they can't get home who are either super scared about what's going on, or they're just biding their time. And what I would say is this is the time where you're going to make a huge change in your lives, because you have this space here that was being built, that was being filled up by everything from, going to the food truck to do something, or walking around the hallway, or hanging out, or whatever. So I kind of just had, for our conversation today, I just had kind of like my top 10 things that GBC students should be doing during this time period, right? So the first thing, now some of these things, now full and fair disclosure, I didn't put any of the really cool stuff. Like I didn't put the cool, like, virtual happy hour, and like go online to go see the Metropolitan Museum of Art online, and watch the Dropkick Murphys concert on St. Patty's Day. All of which, like, I did. So I know they're very cool. So this is some of the more basic things. Most of all, as you and I have talked about before over the last 2 years, I can't believe it's been that long now. Most of success in life is simple, but it's not easy. And the only thing that makes it not easy is it seems so simple, you kind of get bored doing it, right? So one of the first basic things I would tell anyone who is home right now is really just practice gratitude, practice mindfulness, and practice meditation. Our lives are so crazy, and especially GBC students. There's a reason why Goldey-Beacom College was ranked the #1 college or university in the state of Delaware for 2 of the last 3 years. And it's because the students here work ridiculously hard. So many Division II athletes involved in so many clubs. Like the average activities per student at Goldey-Beacom is higher than any other school in the state of Delaware. And that's because the students work really hard. For God's sake, take time to just sit down and just do nothing, and realize that you are probably right now in a place where there's a roof over your head and water in the fridge and Hot Pockets in the freezer, and you probably have it better than a lot of people who are actually dealing with some of these different crises, as long as you're happy and healthy right now. Take a minute to sit back, understand where you are in history, and understand that if you're listening to this podcast right now, you're probably doing okay, and just be grateful for that. The second thing is also, because you're probably either at mom and dad's house or friends' houses, you're probably eating much better food than you were eating on campus. So take a half-hour a day to do some sort of exercise that you probably wouldn't have been doing. Break out mom and dad's old Taibo tapes, break out mom and dad's T25, do some yoga, do some stretching, just stay active, because once everything subsides and we have to get right back into some level of potential grind of school, you want to make sure the blood's flowing, and you want to make sure that you're just kind of staying active. The third thing is something really basic. Take some time to really revamp and check out your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Will Smith, always said best in an interview that he did with Tavis Smiley, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And after this whole thing shakes out, there's going to be more job opportunities. There's going to be more people looking for internships. This whole slowdown will create so many opportunities for students either coming out of school or going into the summer, or have good ideas about how we can stop some of these things from happening. Have your resume ready. There's a million websites about how to update LinkedIn, how to update the resume. If you're at mom and dad's house, for God's sake, take the time to put on your Sunday suit and a tie, sit in front of like a decent wall, and have mom and dad take a picture of you with the iPhone, and have a good picture on the LinkedIn. Just take time to update all that stuff, because there's going to be, out of every time something like this happens, opportunities follow it. So make sure that you're ready for that. Fourth, read the books that you've always wanted to read, watch the movies you wanted to watch, binge the TED Talks that you wanted to look at, and listen to the podcasts that you kind of had on the back burner. Now you have a kind of a good reason to continually educate yourself about things that are important to you. So just do that. Probably on Saturday, I stopped by the Bear Library and got about 20 videos. I literally had to spread them out amongst all my kids, so each of them was checking out 7 videos so I could get that many videos. But just stuff that I either wanted to see or that was just an old black and white movie, stuff that I find inspirational. I like old movies, so I watched Citizen Kane for the 50th time, but I just hadn't seen it in a long time. just watched a bunch of good stuff, listened to a bunch of podcasts, listened to old TED Talks. All those different things were just a really good use of time that I might not have used if I was just kind of like milling around. The fifth thing is, if you don't do it already, start journaling or blogging. Especially if you're in marketing, one of the number one ways to get jobs, especially in marketing, advertising, public relations, is the simple, sheer creation of content. I remember a marketing exec told me a long time ago that the top two things that they're looking for from the marketing company is the ability to use Excel really well to kind of calculate whether or not a campaign will be profitable or not, and some level of consistent journaling for long periods of time, just where you're comfortable talking about things. So nowadays, it's a great time to start a journal because you can talk about your fears, your goals, your aspirations, because you've had the time to actually see the world being changed. We're at kind of a precipice for how we deal not only with infectious disease, but also how we deal with different politics and different governments. And so many things are going to change based on, a virus. And so it'll be, it's a really good time to start writing your story because your story is important. So start doing that. Number 6, college students, I might even look in this camera real quick. College students, for goodness sake, revamp your wardrobe. There are some things, listen, 2020 is a wonderful year for a lot of things. It's time to get rid of some of these clothes. So basically, if you are able to throw out some of the old clothes that you haven't been wearing, get like a new blazer, get a new suit, go online, order it. Work with, maybe if you're around a small business that does that, you're going to get good deals and you're going to help them stay in business. Now is a really good time to be able to do that. I don't know how long joggers will be around. I don't know how long some of this other stuff is going to happen. It's not going to last. Get some good clothes. Prepare yourself for intern season. Prepare yourself for job season. This is the time to do it. Was I on a soapbox too much?
Hey, that's right to me, man.
I promise I wasn't talking to you. I promise I wasn't talking to you in that way. Number 6, now is a really good time to do some reflection on the courses you've been taking in the major that you're in. Okay, now is a really good time to think about those classes you've taken, the professors that you've had, how much they have served you, how much in some cases they haven't served you. Now is the time to take a look at, should I be changing my major? Should I be looking for a professor that I really enjoyed, taking his or her class again? Am I, from when I went to school and declared a major, do I feel as though this is the right track that I'm on? This whole coronavirus piece has given you the opportunity to have a lot of self-reflection about where you are in school and whether or not you are on the path that you wanted to be on. And that kind of leads me into number 8, which is take some time to write out your goals, your strategy, and your tactics. I think oftentimes, most of us, we are used to someone saying, hey, listen, I'm going to write out my goals. I want to graduate with a 3.5. I want to get a job at a big 4 accounting firm. I want to live in New York City. Those are goals. But now is the time to actually figure out what are the strategies to get to those goals, and then what are the tactics. So, for example, if I want to work for a large accounting firm in Delaware, let's say I want to work for Baker Tilly, that's a goal. But what's the strategy? My strategy is to make sure my LinkedIn is updated, make sure my wardrobe is tight, make sure that I'm reaching out to them. So that's my strategy. So what are my tactics? My tactics are, every month check in on my LinkedIn. What can I add? What can I take down from there? Every month, talk to my mom, have her take a look at what I'm wearing. Every day, do a social media post in LinkedIn where I just repost something about accounting. So those would be the tactics. So tactics are daily activities. Strategies are the overall kind of activities that lead to the goal. So take a look at your goals, your strategy, and your tactics. Now, number 9 is declutter everything. So now's the time. We talked about the clothes, but now's also the time to declutter your room, to declutter your apartment, to declutter your house. And also, this whole concept of social distancing is a great opportunity to declutter some of your relationships. If you can look on your social media, like LinkedIn's is one thing because every business contact's a good potential business contact. But whether it's Instagram or it's Twitter or it's Facebook, if you would never call somebody who's a Facebook friend to check in on them to see if they have the virus, you probably don't need to have them as a Facebook friend. So this is officially decluttering season. Like this is the most, spring cleaning of all spring cleaning times. You're cleaning your hands, you're cleaning your face. Now it's time to clean out your social media and clean out your closet. So use this time to absolutely declutter. And then the last and most basic and the most simple thing that you need to do is no matter what, no matter whether this directly impacts you or directly impacts your friends, it has impacted your school, it has impacted your state, it has impacted your country, no matter what country you are. This is truly the time where if you want to set a personal record for yourself of reaching out to people and telling them that you love them, do it now. Because so much no matter what, this whole time period has made me realize how scared I would be to lose my parents or to lose my friends. And so I really want to encourage you, even though it's kind of, some of you might consider this kind of like a hokey type of thing, it feels good. It felt good to call my mom like a couple of days ago and say, "Mom, I'm just calling," and she's like, "What do you need?" So I knew that I probably didn't do this well enough, and I just said, "Mom, I love you," and that's just kind of it. And she was shocked. So once again, I knew I didn't do it enough. So if your mom is shocked by you saying it, that's your cue that you don't do it enough. But this is a really good time that if you haven't reached out to old friends or family or grandmom or granddad or aunts or uncles, just say it, because this is a scary time with kind of an invisible villain that we don't really know when it's going to be over or what's going to be the outcome of this. And so just take the time to tell people that you care about, that you love them, and that you appreciate them, and you'll never feel worse for doing that. So those are kind of my top 10.
And number 11 would be stay inside.
And stay inside. Yeah, I mentioned like some of this basic stuff. Stay inside. Have the virtual house parties, virtual card games, virtual dominoes, whatever you want to do. But stay inside. Wash your hands. Absolutely.
Mom, don't go get that haircut. Yeah.
There you go.
Stay inside.
And Geoff says that because he loves you.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I love you, Mom.
So don't get the haircut.
Yeah. So, this was a lot of valuable information from you, and I do encourage students to reach out to Dan or other professors and staff, especially during this time, just to show your appreciation. And but thank you, Dan. This was a lot of great stuff, and I look forward
Anytime.
to. Yep, I would handshake or fist bump, but
Well, elbow bump.
there you go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Perfect.